And welcome. And I'll get the share ready, and we'll go into the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So we had read here, we went back over, this is the book of, right, the generations of Adam, right? And created male and female, etc. Just looking at the main text of the Torah. Vayikra et shmam Adam. He called their name Adam. Vayom hibaram, on the day that they were created. Interesting. Called their name, their male and female, right? So, Vayikra et shmam Adam. Amar Rabbi Elazar, said Rabbi Elazar, Kol Adam she'ein lo isha eino Adam. Any person, any male, right? Any man who does not have a wife, does not have an isha, is not an Adam, is not a man. Shinemar, as it states, Zachar, this is Zachar, Unekeva Baram, right? Male and female, he created them. Vayikra et Shmam Adam, and he called their name, the two of them, Adam. And I really, I realize this has its own in our society that sort of has issues for it. Unless you want to say that the main issue is having a partner, that to become a whole person, you have to have a partner. And again, I suppose that's also can be questioned, but again, circumstances alter cases, and it still can be talking about the validity, the basic validity of this. Take it for whatever it's worth. Okay. Anyway, I do like the idea that male and female is known as Adam, both together. That's that's at least what I get out of it that I do like a lot. V'girsa acheret, but there's another version of this, Kol Yehudi, which says any Jew who doesn't. Okay. V'hanuscha shelefanenu, but the version in front of us that we have, nir ikar, it would appear to be the more genuine, right? The real one, the real version. Why? Ya'an ha'inyan shayach lemin ha'enoshi bichlal, because this whole subject, the subject of this point that's being made, is attached to the human species in general. That's what it's talking about. So the Yehudi version, he feels, isn't an accurate version. It's less accurate than this one. So let's take a look at what's going on here. Let's see if we can go on with the text a little bit, right? It says, Vayhi Adam shloshim me'at shana, that Adam lived for 130 years. Vayolid bitmutmo betsalmo, ketsalmo, and he sired in his image and his likeness. So if we understand Adam in that sense, right? Male and female, right? Vayikra et shmo Shet, and he called him Shet. We've mentioned Shet before, it's Seth. Remember, after Cain killed Abel, it then says, there's a whole section there, and then it talks about Adam and Eve having relations and having Seth. Right after Cain killed Abel. Anyway, second time here. Vayu Yemei Adam Acharei Holido et Shet Shmoneh U'Manat Shana, and the days of Adam after he had given it sired Seth, 108 years. Sorry, 800. Forgive me, Shmoneh. Forgive me. 800 years. Vayolid Banim Upanot, and he gave birth. He had sired sons and daughters, right? So we've got 800 years, we've got 130 years, so he lived 930 years. And he didn't make it to 1,000, which is significant. And of course, we realize the difference between 1,000 and 930 is 70. 70 is the number of years King David lived, and that is somehow connected to, in the sense that, of course, the Messiah ultimately is a descendant of King David, and there's some connection there with the number of years of 1,000 a day in the sight of the Lord, right? And that connection of how old Adam was and how old King David was. So let's go into here. We're going to see. Vayoled bidmuto b'tzalmo. So the point is that it says that Adam, right? Adam sired in his image and likeness. And of course, we are familiar with that phrase because it says that with regards to Hashem, to God. And so this, of course, gives one pause as to what exactly is this talking about. And, I have a feeling that there's a lot that could be said about this, exactly to try and define what exactly this means. And of course, on the very basic level, we're saying that, that the human species procreated, right? He procreated. But at the same time, when it's saying regards to God and creating man in God's image and likeness, we don't consider ourselves to be divine in the sense of God. There's no comparison whatsoever, unless it has to do possibly with a connection with which human beings have to the divine in the sense of what we can do with this world. And that if we do live our lives, and if I could use the expression, in the light of Torah, we bring the divine presence into this world. And I really do believe that if human beings were able to understand their true purpose, and that is to act with kindness and justice, right? That this world could become an expression of the divine for every human being living here. And who knows? But so much I reflect on the times we're living now and the spreading warfare that's going on and the destruction, etc. And if people had a change of heart, and decided they were going to treat one another with kindness and justice, all that could disappear and people could thrive. And that's what it takes. But it's so difficult, sadly. And that's Cain and Abel, right? That we have that potential. But somehow we get consumed in our own desires and our own selfishnesses and things like that, and it makes it very difficult. I don't think it's impossible. It's definitely difficult. All right. Vayoled bidmuto kitzamo, right? He gave birth, right? He produced in his image and likeness. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar, said Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar. By the way, let me take just a moment, because what you're noticing is the citation of all these different teachers, right? And the truth is, like, this, at one point, the idea was to memorize all this material. And of course, one way you can know whether you've memorized it is if you can remember the names of the people who are the authors of these various different statements. And of course, I personally find that almost an impossibility, but it's certainly a measure of memorization here. That's one piece. There's another piece to it also, and that is in Pirkei Avot we read that someone who cites another person in their name brings redemption to the world. And I suspect that this is underneath it all, the idea of the material that we are studying. It's taking a small step in that direction. And that's why also we cite these people, we attribute, we have all these, I would say, thousands of attributions to various individuals. And of course, another piece that comes out of that, because there are in fact collections that have been made by scholars of the various statements of a certain individual, that it's a way of understanding what we call their shita, meaning their sort of position, their philosophy, the way in which they approach biblical interpretation and their personal philosophy, etc., by being able to collect all their statements that are scattered throughout the rabbinic material and getting a sense of, what consistency they have in what they say. So there's a lot to that, right? Okay, so anyway, Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar said, Kol otan hashanim shehaya Adam harishon benidui. So all those years when Adam, the first man, Adam harishon, benidui means he was excommunicated. We'll explain that a little bit more in the Torah Temimah, right? Holid ruchin v'shedin v'lilin. He sired, right, spirits and demons and night demons, right? How do we know this? Shenemar vaychi Adam shloshim ume'at shana. It says Adam lived for 130 years. Vayoled bidmuto mekal salmo. Excuse me, one moment. And he procreated in his image and likeness. In other words, miklal to ad ha'idna, that the implication is that until that moment, in other words, until 130 years, love kitzamo olid, that he didn't give birth as his image and likeness, etc. So that we would call this a diuk, meaning the way in which we're focusing on the words here and saying, well, that the fact that the point being made in this sentence is that after 130 years, the children he produced were in his image and likeness, and up to that point, they weren't in his image and likeness. And that's the reason for the mentioning of image and likeness here. Let's take a look. Okay. Rambam, right? Moses Maimonides, B'moreh, in his book of philosophy, The Guide to the Perplexed, or The Guide for the Perplexed, the Moreh Nevuchim. And this looks like Perek Zayin, chapter 7, Mei Rishon, and I believe there are at least 2 books, maybe 3. It's been a long time since I've even looked at the Moreh Nevuchim. But in the book 1, right, chapter 7, Be'er, he explains Inyan Agadazo, the issue going on in this Agadah, in this piece of folklore. It's sometimes hard to explain this term Agadah, but it has to do with folkloristic elements of Jewish text, or the rabbinic text. The Hakavana, that the intent of this is sheholid ruchin v'shedin v'lilin, right? That of saying that he sired spirits and demons and night demons. Haino, that is to say, rak gufim, that is to say that they were bodies, right? So they were bodies being born, hadomim la'anashim, which look like human beings, aval belo hadat hashlema, but not with the full intelligence, uchemo hakupim, like apes. In other words, so interesting, right? That at least you can say that the Rambam is saying that there is a direct relationship between human beings and apes, right? Okay. V'hochiach sham, and he proves there, halashon tselem udmut kolel, that the expression of image and likeness, kolel gam shleimut hadat, that so in the Rambam's investigation of what it means to say image and likeness, he says it is the completion of intelligence, right? It's the full intelligence, the cerebral cortex, the ability to reason, etc., that human beings have, that distinguish human beings in a way that other animals, even though they are capable of levels of rational thinking, it's only certain levels. But this is a high level, right? Hareuya levin adam. That is appropriate for a human being. Ye'uyan sham, he says. If you check the source he's given us, you'll see how the Rambam goes into that issue. Venir Eli, and it appears to me, Ra'aya ledvarav. There's a proof to what he says. Mima shekatuv b'Sanhedrin kuf tet aleph, with what is written. Actually, it is a Talmudic source to this in the tractate Sanhedrin, page 109a. Be'inyan, regarding Anshe Dor Haflaga, that regarding the people who were of the generation of the scattering, right? The Tower of Babel story, right? When people were scattered. Shenechlaku l'shloshat kitot b'chula, who were divided into three different groups, etc. Zo she'amra, right? And the proof that goes in Sanhedrin, it states in the Bible, nitla, it's na'aleh v'chule. It says, let us go up, etc. Okay, so let us go up, etc. Na'as, ne'esu, it looks like ne'esu, kupim, veruchim, v'shedin, velidin. They became apes and spirits and demons and night demons. So this is what it must say in Sanhedrin there, and where the Rambam is getting his ideas. Hooray! So we see, here we go. The Chol Hani, again, let me make this a little bit. The Chol Hani Inyan Echadhu Im Kupim. That mentioning, I believe what he's saying is that all these, right, inyan achadhu, in other words, that talking about demons and spirits and night demons is all basically the same thing. Im kupim, it can be connected to apes. So, in other words, not to take demons, etc., too literally, but perhaps to understand it as various kinds of apes. That's what I'm understanding here. Could be wrong, but that seems to be what he's saying. The inyan hanidu. Now let's get into a different subject, and that is Adam's excommunication. Who Meshech Hazman, we're referring to the length of time, Shega'ar bo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in which the Holy One, blessed be He, was angry with him. Let's translate it that way, right? Rebuked him. That the Holy One, blessed be He, rebuked him, mechet achilato me'etz hadat, from the fact that he ate from the tree of knowledge, ad shenitpayes, until he was forgiven. V'tam hadiyuk b'drasha, and again, the reason for this particular interpretation in this drasha, in this interpretation, nir'eh midalokativ, the fact that it doesn't say vayoled et shet bidmudu kitzamo, because it doesn't say he sired Seth in his image and likeness. Daha, because mikriat Hashem, right? Because in the naming of, in other words, if it said the name, right, kfar siper beparsha hakodemet, because as far as the firstborn, that is after Cain and Abel, we already know that his name was Seth. There's no need to mention Seth once again. And he says, Yen bazeh, take a careful look into all of this. So let's quickly take a look at this verse again, right? By the way, this is this last chapter of the Parsha of Bereshit, and it's essentially a genealogy that takes us all the way from Adam to Noah. Okay, so let's go back and see. Yeah, that right. So that's why this Vayikra et Shmo Shet is unnecessary. We already know that, right? So that's why it's saying that the real point of this is that after, because it's giving all this information about 130 years, and it's, in other words, it's saying after Adam, how we're reading this verse, after Adam lived 130 years, he then sired in his image and likeness, right? So up to those 130 years, he didn't. right? Sar, in his image and likeness. That's the logic going on here. All right. Next statement. Vayolid bitmuto b'kitzalmo. Interesting statement here. He gave birth, he sighed in his image and in his likeness. Melamed shenolad Shet mahol. This teaches us that Shet was already born circumcised. He was physically circumcised. He did not need the surgery. The reference is to Avot to Rabbi Natan. We've mentioned this work already. It's quite a significant selection of midrashim in chapter 2. There's this incredible amount of rabbinic material that has survived, and that's of actually very interesting material. Besides the incredible amount of material in the, the encyclopedic level of information in the Talmud, and there are 2 Talmuds, and there's, it's just amazing, all that thing. And again, I'm in awe of the degree to which the author of Torah Temimah, right, Baruch Halevi Epstein, his knowledge, the knowledge of these people is quite stunning, right? So let's take a look. For Adam Harishon Nulad Mahul. So as a matter of fact, Adam was also born circumcised. Kemivuar La'el Aleph Bet. So, excuse me, it looks like that, although of course it's not chapter 1, verse 2. I don't know what he is referring to here. Maybe it's actually the note that he's got, right? So again, I think there's literary significance to saying that they were born circumcised. I believe circumcision has a great deal to do with immortality, and clearly the fact that we're referring to the organ of procreation. And I really think that there's some deep connections there. The idea that Adam himself was originally immortal until he ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Interesting that Seth should also be born in a circumcised state, and whether or not it means the potential for human beings to achieve immortality, I just sense there's some literary connections there because of the connection of the Brit Milah, of the circumcision, to immortality. And why don't I stop here? And you'll see there's not a lot, no Torah Temimah on this page at all. And then because we're going through a formula of the genealogy. And here we go. This is referring to Noah, to the birth of Noah. So I'm going to stop here on this page. And, sorry about that. All right. And we'll continue here. God willing, Friday, we can get some more done, which would be wonderful. So let me take here, and I'll mark this here, and I'm going to stop the share. Comments before I sign off on this?
I feel love is a strange thing. If we have in this generation we're in, we have gay people and lesbian people. They love each other. Okay, if they love each other, there's nothing wrong with that. Right. And they adopted children. What's wrong with that? And of course,
I agree. And adoption, of course, again. Okay, so Harlan, you are talking about circumstances. All right. It's a much, not to say that I'm going to gain a lot of popularity with what I'm about to say, but I would say that the issue has more to do with, I don't believe the Torah forbids people of the same gender to love each other. I don't believe that's a problem.
Okay.
I think what the Torah wants us to do is to act very modestly when it comes to sexual matters. So that if 2 women or 2 men want to be physical in the sense of hugging or things like that, I don't know that the Torah forbids that. But the act of procreation is a sacred act. And to see it as a sacred act is what the Torah wants us to understand, because, of course, it's tied with the miracle of conception and birth. And that is a miraculous occurrence on a certain level when you think about it. And to treat it so for personal enjoyment, even though we know that it's a very deep kind of enjoyment, is possibly something that the Torah wants us to consider very carefully.
What I can't understand is what's happened to the 10 generations before Noah. Nobody says anything about them. That's a long ways.
Yes, it is. It is a long ways. Basically, well, okay. What's the most important question you can ask yourself?
Uh, what will it be?
At least in my opinion, right? Okay. I think the most important question a person can ask themselves is, what's my purpose? Why was I born? Why am I in this world? What am I here to accomplish? And if I were to sort of summarize all those little sub questions, I would say, what significance does my life have? And I do believe that every religion, not just Judaism, tries to answer that question. Know that there is a deep purpose as to why you came into this world. That it is a very beautiful question because it starts to frame your life in relationship to the universe.
I agree.
And I think that is the most important question. So
Yeah.
the most important question isn't how much fun can I get? The most important question is, what can I get out of this world? You know, if I may sort of paraphrase Kennedy, right? Jack Kennedy, not necessarily my favorite person, but simply to say, it's not what this world can do for you, it's what you can do for this world.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When you're able to answer that question and find ways in which to devote your life to answering this question, I believe you find joy and you find life able to deal with life's ups and downs in various kinds of ways. And it takes thought. You have to ponder this question. So on that I'm happy to stop the recording at this point, unless somebody wants to add anything, and I'm happy to take whatever comments you may have. Okay, I'll stop the recording.